Hello and welcome to another edition of The Arbiters Go to the Movies, a special side project of Arbitration Studios. I'm JP Arbiter.
I'm Mrs. Arbiter.
And Mrs. Arbiter, what are we reviewing today?
We are reviewing Pacific Rim.
The Guillermo del Toro kaiju monster masterpiece. So much of a masterpiece that he calls them kaiju, which I think is a first for the genre. So, obviously, Pacific Rim is the first movie in a series, and it was the first that has no. There was no like Pacific Rim cartoon or Pacific Rim anything earlier. It was based on. It sprung forth from Del Toro's mind, whole, ready for battle, like Athena. I'm really making this more noble than it sounds. So,
like Athena from Zeus's brain.
Yep. But so the whole thing though is that the concept of giant monster movies and giant robot movies is nothing particularly new. And the two have gone hand in hand since really the concept of Mechagodzilla, or really the concept of War of the Worlds, when the two were the same thing. Mm-hmm. The giant robots were the monsters, and the things piloting them. So, I've always been, I don't know about you, I've always been a sucker for Japanese giant monster movies, though. I've watched every single Godzilla movie, including the Godzilla Jr. ones. God save me.
Personally, I like all the monster movies, but I've also watched so many horror movies that I don't get fazed by them.
Well, sometimes it's not about being fazed, because if you watch like Gamera or Godzilla, they start to get really ridiculous and really.
I like the ridiculous. That's my thing. I love those B-rated monster movies that are like that random killer octopus movie and Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Those kinds of things.
Yeah. And of course, if you really want a good taste of what this of the real inspiration, the Japanese Sentai series, which gave rise to the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, is almost like the biggest contributor to this. Even before the Super Sentai that did become the B reel for Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Or actually, I guess it would be the A reel, and all the American actors were the B reel.
Probably.
But even before that, you had the Japanese Spider-Man, which was just weird. There's no way to... Why does Spider-Man have a giant robot to fight monsters with? I wish I was kidding.
Spider-Bot?
No, it was a tiger-like thing. But it wasn't the White Tiger Zord, again, from Power Rangers. It was something else.
Interesting.
And then of the probably most famously that was separate from the Super Sentai thing was Ultraman, which had which had a similar setup. Only the guy grew to massive proportions in order to fight giant monsters instead of having a robot of some type.
Which is actually reflected in at least one episode of the Power Rangers. In one of the series, which is...
Well, I knew that before he got the Dragon Zord, the Green Ranger, portrayed by God King among Power Rangers, Jason David Frank, Rita did do the Make My Monster Grow thing to him. And he was just a big Green Ranger. But that was, like, really cool, and the whole Green with Evil miniseries was awesome, and kind of established the Power Rangers for me as a fan of that. So, but since Power Rangers is or the not Power Rangers specifically, although that's what it is in America, but since the Sentai stuff is a contributor to the origins of this, were you ever a fan of that particular?
Not really. I didn't really watch anime then. Even.
It wasn't really anime, but...
But anything with the Japanese roots I really wasn't into at the time.
But I mean, yeah,
I mean,
you're younger than me, so you were in like second or third grade. You had that cultural awareness of what the Power Rangers were. So
yes, but I didn't know anything about like Sailor Moon or any of the other anything else with Japanese influence.
so not really your thing. So
Yeah, not my wheelhouse.
okay.
Not that I'm not into it really a lot right now, but
So, well, then, as an adult and with that particular thing, what do you think? What do you see? What are the parallels in there?
fascinated.
What was your favorite Japanese monster movie?
I don't know. There's too many. I like all of them. That's my problem. I want to take pieces of each of them and make a chimera of all of them.
There was actually a Godzilla movie that did that, where alien invaders picked up all of Godzilla's nemesis, including the American Godzilla,
Oh my.
and the Japanese lured the actual Godzilla to fight all of them again. And seeing actual Godzilla kick the crap out of American Godzilla, like it was treated as some sort of joke or parody for the series, because it's like, yeah, Godzilla deserved better than what the Americans gave him. So I forget which Gamera movie it is. Gamera being the turtle kaiju, who really loves children and always gets his ass kicked in the second act. But the Gamera movie where he gets sent into space and does a gymnastics act on a parallel bar was my favorite one, and I saw it, of all things, in Mystery Science Theater 3000. And when he was doing the gymnastics thing on the parallel bar, Tom Servo says, "Guys, it just occurred to me just how weird this movie is."
About as weird as a mech doing a somersault.
So, oh God, you referenced the Del Rio trilogy. How could you?
As I needed to.
Oh, God bless you, Jen. Anyway, shall we get on to the plot?
You know you love me.
I do. Let's
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Pacific Rim.
We begin with an entry from Wikipedia about the definition of kaiju and Jaeger, before being given an expository voiceover, the champion of good movies. This voiceover explains how alien life came from a portal created by a rift between two tectonic plates, expelled a monster that destroyed the central California coast. Every 6 months the pattern repeated, with the monster destroying a major coastline. It required a massive military force to stop, only to see the monster's blood turning its gravesite into a toxic cesspool called Kaiju Blue. After the fourth beast was slain, the nations sat alongside the Pacific Rim.
Roll credits.
Banded resources together to create a new weapon to counter these kaijus, while minimizing the environmental effects of conventional and nuclear weapons. The Jaegers were born.
Now, early on in this movie, and this is a nitpick I'm going to address throughout the entire movie, it's very important. It's said that a single human being can't withstand the load of the neural interface that's needed to operate the machine, the Jaegers. Instead, two human minds have to work in parallel. So, but because of this new system, eventually the tide has turned and the kaiju problem was determined to be mundane at best. So.
And finally, the movie decides to start.
Fuck this movie.
In the Alaskan archipelago, a Jaeger named Gypsy Danger is called to action, and brothers Riley and Yancey,
played by Charlie Hunnam and Diego Klattenhoff,
must ride to defeat a kaiju codenamed Knifehead. Riley and Yancey were explained as not being the image you would expect of Jaeger pilots. They were not academically or athletically inclined, but very loyal to each other. And more importantly, they were drift compatible. We are then showed Gypsy Danger powering up, after suits are put on the brothers and their faces splashed with yellow gunk. Ew.
Sticky. They never explain what that yellow stuff is that they literally flood the helmets with and then drain. I assume that it's just like window washing for the helmet visor. But they never really explain it.
Who knows? And then they never show it again.
I know. Fuck this movie.
Their boss, Marshall Pentecost,
played by Idris Goddamned Elba,
and Communications Officer Choi,
played by Clifton Collins,
give them a pat on the butt as the head module is lowered to the body and locked on. A bitchin' rock and roll orchestra soundtrack plays as Gypsy Danger is lowered into the water. Finally, the parallel neural sequence is locked, and Gypsy Danger is hot, showing it is ready to rock and roll with a martial arts bow.
God, this movie is so cool.
After some more psychological diatribe, we cut to the taping of Deadliest Catch, who are caught in the path of Knifehead, who is doggy paddling to shore, only for Gypsy Danger to surface on the other side of the boat. Gypsy Danger picks up the boat and maneuvers it behind him, then quickly does a quick combo followed by a double axe head. Knifehead bites one hand, but Gypsy counters it by transforming its other hand into an energy cannon, seriously wounding it.
Oh my god, I swear he's torn in half!
Knifehead swims around and impales Gypsy's arm and severs it, injuring Riley before tearing open the cockpit and taking Yancey, leaving Riley as the only pilot operating Gypsy Danger. A lot of screaming and biting at the stub of the arm. Riley manages to fire off his energy cannon, wiping both from their controls center's screens. We cut to the Alaskan coastline where a man, and we presume his son or grandson,
otherwise it would be really, really weird,
indeed, are waving metal detectors, and the old man is saying how he'd like to find a whole ship someday. Their metal detectors go berserk. At first, the boy thinks it's 'cause they found an old tin robot. But then a giant tin robot walks ashore and face plants onto the ice. Gypsy Danger, with only one wounded pilot, manages to return safely, a feat that should make Riley a hero. And finally, we get the title screen.
Fuck this movie. I mean, seriously, this whole inciting incident, which has taken the better part of 20 minutes, and we're just now getting to the title.
5 years later, the Alaskan Shatter Dome is being closed. Marshall Pentecost is being debriefed that the Jaeger program is losing ground, and the world's nations have instead elected to build a big, beautiful wall. Huh. That sounds like something we hear every day.
But who's paying for it?
Anyway. A wall that seems to cost the lives every day to build. Hey, there you go. And those deaths are being treated as mere job openings. We see Riley clearly displaced as one of those day laborers. While on his lunch break, we see the wall is not all it's meant to be. As the kaiju breach the Australian sector with little effort, showing the audience that the wall is a bad idea. alongside the people working to build it. While Riley is digesting this, the nose of a super stallion helicopter lands and Marshall Pentecost steps out, seeking Riley. We learn that for 5 years and 4 months, Riley has walked up and down the wall, chasing work shifts to make a living. Meanwhile, Marshall Pentecost has been scraping together an army of Jaegers and operators. He was seeking out Riley as uniquely qualified as one of the last living pilots of a particular generation of Jaegers. Riley is hesitant, but Marshall Pentecost is so goddamn cool, he can't be resisted.
I mean, it's Idris Elba. So, would you say no to Idris Elba?
Probably not.
Before we continue, there's something that I gotta mention. The Jaeger pilots in Australia are explicitly mentioned to be a father and son team, whereas earlier in the film, it is strongly implied that you have to be siblings, or that Riley and his brother Yancey were drift compatible because they were siblings. Now, at this point, I'm willing to accept that family members are a nice shortcut for drift compatibility. But already, we're not even well into the second act of the movie, and the rules are starting to change. So, anyway, continue, please.
Cut to the same super stallion helicopter flying to a small island off of Hong Kong, the last remaining Jaeger base. A woman with a big black umbrella covering her face walks up to meet the helicopter. Wait, there's an anime like this.
There's a lot of animes like this.
Okay, just making that note.
But considering the strong anime influence in Pacific Rim, should you be surprised?
No.
Okay.
And we see Mako Mori.
Portrayed by, and I'm gonna butcher her last name, Rinko Kikuchi.
She addresses Marshall Pentecost in Japanese, saying Riley was not who she expected to be. Riley, clearly understanding what she was saying, asked in Japanese for better or for worse. Better or for worse.
Snap! Yes, you got pwned!
Before entering the Shatterdome, two eggheads follow them onto the elevator and we are introduced to Newt Geyser,
played by Charlie Day,
and Herman Galablit.
It doesn't matter because we're not going to use his name.
Gobbledygook?
We're not going to refer to him by his last name. We're going to refer to him by the actor's name because the actor's name is Bern Hugh Gorman. Bern Gorman. That is the coolest name ever. I want that name. We're trading names. I'm going to track down Bern Gorman. I'm going to make him sign his name over to me. Bern Gorman is so cool, so manly. Why did Guillermo del Toro ever come up with Herman Gottlieb, by the way?
Gottlieb.
Or Gottlieb. No, we're going to call him Dr. Bern Gorman. Okay? Deal?
Deal.
Oh my god, that name is so goddamn cool, just like this movie.
Okay. Newt is considered something of a fanboy of these monsters, even having a tattoo of a kaiju on his arms. Finally, we're introduced to Jaeger teams. Crimson Typhoon from China, top of the line and piloted by a team of triplets, who operate the three-armed beast. Cherno Alpha, the oldest Jaeger still in service. So old, it actually uses a pre-Jaeger designation of T90, piloted by husband and wife pair, who hold the record for the longest single patrol of 6 years. Finally, Striker Eureka, operated by the father-son pair from Australia, the same Jaeger that defended Sydney after the breach of the Big Beautiful Wall. Finally, Gypsy Danger, refitted with a nuclear reactor, and Riley returning to pilot, if they can find someone who can work with him.
It's at this point now I've got to gripe again about the changing of the rules. Because now we have Cherno Alpha, who is piloted by, and this is not explained in the movie, it's actually explained in the comic books, a husband and wife team. So now you can drift with someone who you are not related to, but I can still kind of buy, a husband and wife, eventually they're going to get on the same wavelength unless they're as dysfunctional as you and I.
We're not that dysfunctional.
No, we're not. But so I guess that eventually the stars can line up, but the importance and the value of drift compatibility at this point is waning. So that's what makes it irritable, and then the next part just dilutes it even further. So with that, continue.
Marshall Pentecost informs the audience that there's a plan to strap a 2,400-pound nuclear device with a yield of 1.2 megatons to the back of Stryker Eureka and ride it to the breach, using its speed to get there. The other 3 Jaegers are assigned to play linebacker for Stryker. Riley is confused, reminding Pentecost that hitting the breach was something tried multiple times before, and no weapon ever got through it, indicating the portal is a one-way in. Marshall Pentecost insisted he has a plan.
I do like the fact, by the way, that they don't present a situation of how come no one's ever thought about dropping a big-ass bomb on this thing before.
We cut to the research lab where Bern Gorman...
Seriously, we're just using his real name.
...indicates that kaiju attacks used to happen every month or so, and the schedule accelerated exponentially until this point, wherein not only is it likely that we will see a kaiju erupt in 7 days' time, but multiple kaiju. Something never before seen. After 2, there might be 3, and eventually an army of these will come through. That widening of the berth may be the event necessary to permit them to drop the bomb, theoretically making the portal a two-way by necessity. Dr. Newt has a different point of view, though, showing off his own research. He displays that on an anatomical and genetic scale, kaiju are identical despite outward appearances. This leads to him believing that he can use a kaiju brain and drift with a human brain, and give the Rangers hard intel on how to get through the breach. Somehow.
Fuck this movie.
Pentecost and Hercules dismissed the idea out of hand, and asked for Dr. Bern Gorman's detail, despite the fact that he has little to go off of as well. Dr. Gorman insists that Dr. Newt would kill himself in the attempt, and Dr. Newt insists it would be awesome.
He's not wrong.
No. Maury shows Riley to Gypsy Danger and reunites him with Tendo. Maury calls out Riley, stating that he is not a by-the-book pilot, and argues that is what got his brother killed. Riley says that she's right, but in the fields, sometimes things happen.
Basically accepting and deflecting responsibility for his brother's death in the same breath. That is amazing levels of dissembling.
Mako informs Marshall Pentecost that the trial for Riley's co-pilots are set to begin in the morning, and insists that she gets a shot. Pentecost shoots her down, first saying they talked about it previously, and her desire for revenge against the kaiju clouds her ability to be a good pilot. At the chow hall, Hercules welcomes Riley to sit with him and his son, Chuck.
Played by Robert Kaczynski, whom I only ever recall seeing literally as the antagonist for the penultimate season of True Blood. When he played that half angel, half vampire dude. Other than that, I am not familiar with literally anything else this guy has done aside from those two things. So
Chuck almost immediately calls out Riley, stating that 5 years since he had piloted a Jaeger, and his record makes him a liability. Herc apologizes for his son, but Riley brushes it off. The next day, trials begin in form of kendo rounds, with no clear definition of what they're looking for.
But stick fighting is so cool.
Riley begins to make a comeback against one of the candidates when Mako gives a tell that Riley is not performing as well as he should. Sick of this, Riley calls Mori out and uses a measure of dick waving to get Pentecost to agree. Mako removes her shoes and jacket to reveal a tank top underneath. Neatly folding stuff, I might add.
Yes. And putting her boots on top of her uniform.
Mm-hmm. Neat and tidy.
Very Japanese.
Mm-hmm. They take their fighting stance and their fighting keeps them neck and neck, proving their compatibility when it comes to a fight. Pentecost is convinced, but won't reveal whom Riley's co-pilot is.
And there it is. We go from you gotta be siblings to you gotta be family to husband and wife who have been together, or spouses or people that you have been together for literally a very long time to get to that wavelength, to hot Japanese chick with blue bangs. Drift compatibility is meaningless. There is no reason in this movie why this mechanism needs to be so particularly special when it could just be two very well-trained individuals. They throw it all out. There's nothing about this that even needs that is even justifiably explained to have two pilots, other than the neural load is too heavy, and that was just so they could have two people being awesome in a robot instead of one. Fuck this movie.
You done?
No, we'll get to the next part.
You need a mint?
Ooh, lifesavers. I'll suck on this mint. You continue.
Okay. A news report shows riots along the Pacific Rim after the failure of the Sydney Wall. Elsewhere, Newt has rigged his own drift system and a computer to interpret the findings, and he plans on drifting with a damaged but still alive brain sample in his lab. He also seems to be recording his last will and testament. Uh-oh.
Also, I should point out that his computer and or the homemade drift equipment, for some reason, has a fireplace bellows that's actively pumping air at a steady, slow pace. I have no idea why.
What follows is an acid trip that has to be seen to be believed.
Seriously, we cannot describe what happens on screen.
Yeah.
All we know is that it's blue. It is very, very blue.
Willy Wonka, eat your heart out.
There's no way of knowing which way the train is going.
Elsewhere, Riley is heading to Gypsy Danger to meet his new co-pilot, while Mako spies through the door's peephole. Riley considers knocking on her door, but thinks twice. Meanwhile, inside Mako's room, there is a knock on her door. We see Marshal Pentecost give a curt, respectful bow to Mako and ask to come in.
And he comes in before she can really give any actual consent. I guess there may be some, subtle Japanese cultural thing between a father figure and their child, or a superior officer to a subordinate or whatnot.
She bows back to him.
That was when she first opened the door. Was because he bowed, she bowed, may I come in? And then he steps before there's really the only thing that kind of implies affirmative consent is maybe she might have twisted to the side a little.
Well, she had to move to get clear room because it's a small space.
Yeah, but if he's just barging in like a big rhinoceros, I mean, he's
not the Juggernaut, dude.
It's Idris goddamn Elba, a 6'2", well-muscled man, and this little teeny tiny Japanese woman.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta be honest with you. I get out of Idris Elba's way, and I'm only 2 inches shorter than him.
Fair enough.
So, anyway. I'm sorry, continue. That bit of fascination with how, may I come in, barge, was worth mentioning.
Mako moves aside to let him into the small room. Or get out of his way. Pentecost gives her a child's red ruby slipper.
Mako and Pentecost clearly understand what this means, but we're not going to be shown what it means for another, 15 minutes.
Pretty much. Maybe 5.
Nah, it's a while because, other stuff happens.
True. We cut to Gypsy Danger where Riley is awaiting his co-pilot. And we find out it's Mako.
Yay! Mako passed the test after all!
The test fires up and we catch a glimpse of both of their memories. Yet, despite everything, it's now shown you can drift with a total stranger with enough focus.
Fuck this movie.
And then Gypsy Danger goes into a fighting pose.
Did I ever mention how cool this movie is?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Just now.
This movie is so cool.
The test is interrupted by Dr. Gorman, who's informed of Newt's experiment gone awry. Shaking and sipping water, Newt points to Marshall Pentecost and says how awesome he is.
And he's right.
Pentecost shows Newt down and asks him for a full debrief. Even going so far to tell Dr. Gorman to shut his damn mouth.
It's amazing how once Newt just said, fuck you, I'm doing it anyway, that is okay, you survived it, and now we're going with this plan. And then I saw his face, and now I'm a believer.
The brute force method can work.
Yes.
We find out that the kaiju are under orders from intelligent beings that seem to have watched Independence Day and thought the aliens had a good idea. Upon hearing this, Pentecost puts on his best Idris Elba face, so his own good face, got it, and demands Newton drift with the brain again for more specific information. Newt says he can't without a fresh and intact brain. And the drift he did, as the drift destroyed the one he had. Pentecost outlines that there are groups of smugglers whose business it is to traffic kaiju tissue and remains. And it is through their leader, Hannibal Chow,
played by Ron goddamn Perlman. We have 2 goddams in this movie and a third honorary goddamn. We've got Idris goddamn Elba, Ron goddamn Perlman, and Burn Gorman. Awesome name. Can we please trade? So, 3 awesome actor names.
That a first rights agreement was made that got Pentecost the funding needed to maintain the Hong Kong Shatterdome. When asked if he had the authority to do so, Pentecost basically shrugged his shoulders and said, "Who cares?"
Really, that was a good way to say it. Do you have the authority? Who's gonna stop me?
I mean, what else are they gonna do with it, right?
It's the end of the world. If they can't stop it, then guess what? Any deals he made don't matter.
Yeah.
Better to ask forgiveness than beg permission. Go.
Gypsy Danger is finishing calibration when both Riley and Mako fall out of alignment. Riley flashing back to his brother's death, while Mako's flashing back to the loss of Tokyo.
Bit of a scale difference there.
Indeed. Riley is able to bounce back, but Mako stays under. And we relive her childhood in the middle of the street as American F-22s are strafing a crab-like kaiju, no more than 4 stories tall.
Tiny little guy by comparison of what we've seen so far.
Yeah. Riley manifests in Mako's memory and tries to talk her back, but the fear overwhelms her. She accidentally engages Gypsy's plasma cannon, threatening to vaporize the entire crew. Her panic overloads even the failsafe that should prevent her from doing so. Back in the flashback, we see overhead a Jaeger being flown to engage the crab chum, but the memory is interrupted by Tito cutting the power lines in order to shut down Gypsy Danger. Gladios from Portal asks us if we want to try again.
Oh, this movie is so cool.
Cutting to the streets of Hong Kong is Newt, looking for Hannibal Chow's lair using a UV light. He follows the dragon hag to a Chinese pharmacy, where a bald white man, speaking in a horribly racist tones, offers kaiju bone for male potency. When Newt says he's looking for Hannibal Chow, either a gun cocks or a door locks or both. And a secret door opens to a lab with techs working on samples, and Newt is clearly in heaven. Chow introduces himself and explains the origins of his name, and being his favorite historical figure and his second favorite Sichuan restaurant in Brooklyn.
Not only is this movie so cool, but Hannibal Chow is so goddamn cool.
Back at the Shatterdome, Chuck is having a conversation with Pentecost and taking an inordinate amount of possession with the mission. After being told to stay put by dear old Dad, he chews out Riley and Mako. But when he calls them little bitches, Riley kicks his ass.
And there's no mistaking it, by the way. This isn't like a somewhat even fight where they both get scuffed up. No, Riley kicks his fucking ass. Mops the floor with him. Chuck, to his credit, doesn't give up the fight, though.
Yeah. Herc and Pentecost break up the fight, and Pentecost calls Riley and Mako to his office. Pentecost grounds Mako, citing her inexperience and trauma. We also see how awesome Pentecost is with the most epic lines ever.
1, don't you ever touch me again. 2, don't you ever touch me again. Now, you have no idea who the hell I am or where I've come from, and I'm not about to tell you my whole life story. All I need to be to you and everybody on this dome is a fixed point. The last man standing. I do not need your sympathy or your admiration. All I need is your compliance and your fighting skills. And if I can't get that, then you can go back to the wall that I found you crawling on. Do I make myself clear? Yes, sir. Good.
Okay. I gotta say this. The stakes in this movie are high, given that it's the end of the world as we know it. Clearly Pentecost feels fine, though. But that whole burden of command and how it weighs on Pentecost and how he deals with it. Here is a man who knows what his responsibility is, knows that everyone looks to him for direction and for leadership, and that he has to show that strong bit of stability. He refers to it as a fixed point. And that's just, it's delivered so well, and it's such a terrible ass chewing on Riley that I know if I were in the character Riley's position, my sphincter would have clenched up a bit. I don't know about yours.
Probably.
It's just, and with Idris Elba delivering it, it's just like, so is this the part where you kill me now? Because he has that kind of authority. So, or he can present that kind of authority.
Finally, after all of this, We get some action as movement is detected in the breach. Like Dr. Byrne Gorman predicted, Crimson Dynamo, Cherno Alpha, and Striker Eureka are sent to intercept and protect the coast, while Hong Kong takes shelter. While the shelter signal is called, Cho and Newt are discussing the need for a kaiju brain. Apparently, Newt never learned anything about dinosaurs because he believes in the secondary brain theory that was discredited in the 1960s. Still, kaiju have a second brain, so there is that. Chow insists that a brain is worthless because of the kaiju body chemistry, and despite needing to keep things confidential, explains that he can drift with kaiju brains, and Hannibal, with no information whatsoever, assumes that drift also exposes the kaiju creators to his mind, and thus all the plans of the Shatternome, and so they can track Newt wherever he is.
He comes to this conclusion with no information whatsoever. Just, okay, I can drift with a kaiju brain and I've already done it. Wait a second. You are fucking us all. Just that logical leap. And it's like, I wouldn't have made that leap. So...
Not everyone would have.
Anyway.
Clearly quite a few didn't.
But that's how awesome Chow is. So...
Chow kicks Newt the fuck out of his place. Back on the coast, Crimson Typhoon gets an enziguri kick from Otachi. Crimson Typhoon responds with a triple hand buzzsaw attack. But Otachi counters by grasping its hand actuators. Typhoon responds with a jump jet assist cartwheel and throws Otachi over its head, allowing Cherno Alpha to follow up with rapid fire punches. But a tail strike knocks Alpha down. Otachi grabs Crimson Typhoon's head with his claw at the tip of its tail and crushes it, all the while swelling its throat up like a frog and spitting acid on Cherno Alpha. Striker Eureka attempts a rescue, but we get last-minute interference from Leatherback, who rips off the head of Alpha, while Otachi intercepts Eureka.
Did I mention this movie is so fucking cool? I mean, we're finally at the point that we're all here for, and oh my god! So worth it. So worth it.
With Alpha and Crimson down, Striker tries to do a missile Alpha strike, but Leatherback pulls out its trademark trait and EMPs Striker, Hong Kong, and the Shatterdome. We then get a bunch of Vaughn bullshit about digital technology and how Striker is shut down. Gypsy Danger won't be affected by the pulse because it's analog.
Whatever the fuck that means.
Right?
Well, what makes the digital Jaegers digital? What makes Gypsy analog? My initial thought on this was that Gypsy's control mechanism, the legs of the pilots are bolted into a gearbox mechanism in the neck, so it's like the pilots are physically moving the legs and the gear ratio and the gears and whatnot, but that doesn't explain the arms. And also that same system's on Cherno Alpha, who was also a first-generation Jaeger and thus should also be analog, but was taken out. So
yes.
So I have no idea what the difference between analog and digital is, and if it's supposed to be because Gypsy has a nuclear reactor, what the holy hell is powering everyone else?
Not nukes.
Not nukes. Not a nuclear reactor. Anyway, continue.
Otachi's left to rampage in Hong Kong, while Leatherback holds the line against the Shatterdome, showing incredible strategy and proving Newt right. By the way, you take shelter in a Hong Kong subway station.
Newt does.
Newt does, that is. Hercules' arm is broken when Stryker's head is punched. But Chuck tells his dad that they're out of the fight. Hercules insists that they're not out of the fight yet.
I'm not going anywhere! Now you and I are the only thing standing between that ugly bastard and the city of 10 million people. Now we have a choice here. We either sit and wait or we take these flare guns and do something really stupid.
Guess which one they do. Despite having a bum arm, Herc is a good shot. His flare hits Slayback in the eye and distracts it long enough for Gypsy Danger to get in the game. Cue up some awesome music and Gypsy Danger being so damn cool as he fights Leatherback, eventually obliterating a port and blasting a hole clean through him with the plasma cannon just knocking down a dock tie with a ding. It's like a carnival game.
Yeah.
Back in the Fallout shelter, Newt can't keep his mouth shut and reveals that the kaiju are specifically after him. Great. Good job. Good job. And somehow the Chinese believe him. Instead of believing he is nuts...
Or that they understand him at all, considering he was rambling in English.
Uh-huh. Just as Itachi cracks open the shelter and is about to feast on a bunch of nerds, Gypsy Danger walks up, dragging a commercial tanker behind him like a club, setting off car alarms. Gypsy Danger walks up, dragging a commercial tanker behind it like a club, setting off car alarms the entire way, and strikes Itachi 4 times before it is grabbed. Gypsy Danger is bitch-slapped by Itachi to the ground. A literal block-by-block street fight ensues as Itachi jumps through a high-rise and tackles Gypsy, who responds with a 3-point combo, and the last hook missing and going through an office building. First, fist stopping short enough to trigger the Newton's cradle on one cubicle.
Oh my god, this movie is so cool. But so dumb. But so cool.
Itachi then tackles Gypsy through another building and tries to spit acid on her. Gypsy manages to dodge and grabs Itachi's tongue, but is grabbed by its tail before Gypsy can rip it out. Riley tells Mako to vent coolant out from her side, freezing the tail and allowing the massive robot to shatter its bindings.
If you're venting coolant, wouldn't it be like really boiling hot because it's already absorbed all of the heat of the engine?
You'd think.
And it is running it through the radiators away. I mean, coolant is not cryogenic.
No, it's not.
So...
Thus enabling it to rip out the acid-spewing organ. Itachi, wounded, has one more trick, though. Tackling Gypsy and grasping it with its talons and unfurling its wings in its arms, bringing the mech into the upper atmosphere. Riley believes they are out of options until Mako reveals that Gypsy is equipped with retractable swords. Retractable swords they could have been using this entire time.
Fuck this movie. I mean, seriously, normally I say, dude, shit like that's not a plot hole, or dude, you're overthinking it, or dude, you're not thinking hard enough about things. You know, it's sort of like, why don't the Eagles do everything? Forgetting that the Eagles are not, in Lord of the Rings, are not simple animals. No, in this particular case, Riley should have been briefed on the swords, and the swords should have been an option from the get-go. Mm-hmm. In fact, there's really no reason to not have those bad boys out from the get-go.
Yeah.
So, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is fuck this movie.
Falling from low orbit, Gypsy vents nuclear fuel like a rocket to attempt to slow its descent, but still forms a crater in a soccer stadium. blowing World Cup plans for that year. Still, Gypsy is intact. Pentecost orders the Jaegers to be brought in for repairs, and for Dr. Burr and Gordman to find Newt.
His name is so awesome.
Hannibal, meanwhile, plans his salvage operation in the kaiju corpse, and it seems amused as hell when Newt is bad-mouthing him, saying he owes him a brain.
I think he actually calls Ron Perlman bitch.
Actually, he does, I think.
Yeah, that's...
And that's more the moment of, dude, if we get one, you can have the brain.
You've earned it.
Wow. Back at the base, Mako and Riley are treated as big goddamn heroes, as they should be for tackling 2 kaijus at once. But Pentecost has to be a party pooper, reminding everyone of their losses and orders the clock reset. Back at the whole kaiju roast, Hannibal explained the procedure to harvest the brain. Racist McBaldhead explains the smell and discovers the secondary brain is ruptured. But then they find out something worse. Or better. Or worse.
Or better.
Or better.
Or worse.
Or worse. Otachi was pregnant and gives birth while deceased. Otachi Jr. goes on a rampage, but chokes on its umbilical cord before it can eat Newt.
So, despite being Otachi, the flying one, is mammalian. Leatherback was clearly mammalian in nature, but Otachi struck me as more reptilian, but it gave live birth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sort of live.
Yeah.
Like, it would have been a live birth.
Yes.
Had it lived.
Yes.
But it's not alive. I'll stop now.
Have a mint.
Ooh, lifesavers.
Hannibal tries to play like he's a badass and he knew what would happen. But in the end, he gets eaten by its death throes.
This movie is so cool.
Back at the base, Pentecost is cleaning himself up from another nosebleed. And Riley calls him out on his illness.
And we never really explain what this illness is that's causing the nosebleed, and the only thing that he's taking is some sort of yellow pill. And he's just like, that's it. Out of an Altoid 10. So
first, it is the lack of radiation shielding on the first gens giving him cancer, and then it was neurological damage to his brain from the drift, only accelerated from having to fight for nearly 3 hours alone in a Jaeger. No idea what this illness is.
Fuck this movie.
Still, there is no time to mourn as Gypsy and Stryker need to be called into action. There are 2 more Category 4 kaiju have emerged and are guarding the breach. A unique behavior so far. Tendo reminds Pentecost of Hercules' injury, and thus his inability to pilot Stryker, but Pentecost insists. Back at the whole kaiju roast, Dr. Gordman is puzzled as to why it is a double event, and not a triple like he predicted. While Newt is jacking into the baby kaiju's brain. After some marital arguments, Dr. Gorman insists on jacking into the kaiju brain with Newt, to gather intel firsthand and to distribute the neural load as not to injure Newt again. Back at the base, Chuck has not been suited up despite orders, and is wondering how he's supposed to fight without a co-pilot, only for a door to open and for Marshal Pentecost to come out in combat gear. Mako reminds Pentecost that the drift will kill him. He counters that not piloting will cost the lives of everyone on Earth. And then Pentecost gives the most arousing speech in the movie.
Listen up!
edge of our hope. At the end of our time, we have chosen not only to believe in ourselves, but in each other. Today, there's not a man nor woman in here that shall stand alone. Not today. Today, we face the monsters that are at our door and bring the fight to them. Today, we are canceling the apocalypse. Oh my God, he's so goddamn cool!
Chuck, heading for Stryker's gantry, is so confused by the continued disregard for the rules of the movie that he asks the obvious question of how he's supposed to drift with the brain-damaged superior officer. Pentecost explains that he can drift with anyone because he is a brain-damaged man who goes into the machines in a pure state of zen. Our words, not his.
But it is basically, he is zen.
Yes.
He is ascended.
And
So, the rules of who can drift with who at this point are officially thrown out the window because you can drift with a brain-damaged Idris Elba. Seriously. Fuck this movie.
pretty much. Chuck shares a deep moment with dear old dad. French kisses his French bulldog and departs for war. Mecco and Riley share a moment as well, but it sucks. Back at the whole kaiju roast.
I wrote that joke and I still don't know why it makes me snort every time.
Back at the whole kaiju roast, Burr Gorman and Newt share each other's memories. Someone was abused in the past, and we get more acid flashbacks, seizures, and nosebleeds. Burr Gorman wrenches into a toilet, and they find out the whole plan the movie is hinged on will not work because of course it won't.
Because of course it won't.
Meanwhile, Gypsy and Stryker move underwater, headed towards the continental shelf that will take them to the breach. Meanwhile, two kaiju are harassing but not engaging the Jaegers until they wind up face to face just short of the breach. Newt and Gorman tell them the plan won't work because passage is tied directly to the kaiju's genetic material. So they have to hop one in just as one hops out. I think. No time to argue because a third kaiju jumps out. A never before seen category 5. Enter the 4-armed, 3-tailed purple people eater. Slanter. There are no two ways about it. Stryker and Gypsy are getting their ass kicked. One losing an arm, the other taking on water. In exchange, Gypsy fillets Raiju with its remaining chainsword. In a desperate maneuver, Stryker detonates the nuke, vaporizing Slantern and wounding Skerner.
And one of the props that I have to give Pacific Rim, I mean, first off, the effects surrounding the nuclear detonation underwater. One thing I'm gonna cut some slack on is the fact that Gypsy Danger survives the shockwave of the nuclear blast, because the Jaegers have been shown to be incredibly durable at this point. I mean, the strikes that kaiju and Jaegers perform on each other are described as being impacts of nuclear weapons, only kinetic in nature instead of thermal. And while water is incompressible and thus makes explosions all the more dangerous, I can suspend my disbelief and buy that Gypsy, even in a damaged state, survives it. Now, the fact that we have this dome of no water, just gas, underwater, and then it all collapses. Oh, that was sweet.
You were in heaven.
It was a great effect. Especially bottom-feeding ocean fish flopping around on the coral bed. And just just, and then all of a sudden, whoosh, back in. It was so cool. It was so cool.
I wonder how much water was evaporated from that alone. Granted, it was like a drop in the bucket, but still.
Several million gallons.
I know, but it was still a drop in the bucket, and it wouldn't have funny.
Well, a drop in the literal bucket in this case, but and most of it wasn't actually vaporized; it was just displaced.
I know,
by the energy of the explosion. So, but yeah, it was such a cool effect. So, continue, please.
Dragging Raiju's corpse is a key. Gypsy heads for the breach, only to see a really messed up Skirner trying to block it. Tackling Skirner, spearing it as they go down the breach and through to the other side. Torching a hole through fuel purge on the way down and killing the Category 5 kaiju.
Would you say they break on through to the other side?
Yes. Yes, they do.
You would not... are you saying you are not going to tolerate me singing the song?
Correct.
Jim Morrison, I am not.
You are not.
Okay.
Sorry, I love you, but no. We enter another dimension. Dimension not of sight, but not only of sight, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land of imagination. We see Gypsy Danger tumbling through it, while Riley sets the reactor to detonate, while setting Mako in an escape pod. All the dramatic stuff happens, of course. Override controls won't work, so he has to do it manually. He almost falls into the gears. Their son... He almost falls into the gears, and which look...
I'm gonna stop.
Yeah. All the dramatic stuff happens. Of course. Override controls won't work, so he has to do it manually. He almost falls into the gears. This dimension's sun looks like an eye in the universe, and everything looks like an anus. But eventually someone sets up the bomb and Riley escapes. The breach is closed and rescue choppers are deployed for Riley and Mako. Both pods have landed and Mako swims to Riley's pod. We think he is dead, but nope, he's just playing. What a rascal. Hercules self-promotes to Marshal.
Can he do that? It's the end of the world, right?
Can't he? and declares the breach sealed, and he orders the clock to stop, officially canceling the apocalypse. And that is Pacific Rim. We're treated to the mid-credit sequence where Ron Perlman jumps out of the baby kaiju, demanding to know where his shoes are.
Oh my god, he's so goddamn cool. So, Mrs. Arbiter, did you like Pacific Rim or not?
I loved it.
Honest Trailers said it best for me. This is either the dumbest best movie ever or the best dumb movie ever. I mean, all the times that I said fuck this movie were because of logical or script writing inconsistencies or Guillermo del Toro's tragic and for some reason glossed over inability to stick to the rules of his movies that he writes and just tosses out for plot convenience. Which cute, but it bugs me when you firmly establish rules in your story and then casually throw them away. So and that was one of those things. The casting was fantastic. Idris Elba was a glorious character. While the man who played Riley had some trouble controlling his British accent, in the film. Riko Kikuchi did very well, especially as a, hey, English is not my primary language actress. Mm-hmm. And I gotta give it to Max Martini as Hercules Hansen, who delivered my favorite line in this movie, one of my favorite lines in all of the movies, and a line that kind of sums up yours in my marriage, which is, now we either sit here and wait, or we take these flare guns and do something really stupid.
Yep.
So,
we always went with the flare guns.
yes. Yes, sometimes I look at you with the flare guns and go, what the fuck are you doing?
I'm your Nora. That's why.
You know, Charlie Hunnam is the weak link in here, and it's not because he's not trying. It's just that the protagonist is literally being outclassed by literally everyone else around him. You know, the only other person who's down on Charlie Hunnam's level is Robert Kaczynski as Chuck Hansen. So, you know, it's all well and good. I dig it. Now, see, fortunately, while this movie was just kind of okay in the United States, it did well enough in China that we got a sequel, Pacific Rim 2. That was okay. It was okay. It was just kind of meh.
It's the big robot thing. That's what I read. That's what the people dig more.
And that's the thing, is that so long as I get big robot movies, I will gladly take okay. So, what else about this movie that you enjoyed so much?
The music.
Oh yeah,
The music.
that whole guitar riff.
Oh, yes. The fact that I'm reminded of it every video game, you know you're going to be into the middle of a fight the second the certain music hits.
Uh-huh.
And it's gone whenever and it fades when you're done.
So the guitar riff plays. It's right up there with things like the big Halo, you know, that's that whole thing. I dig it.
That's what the second one missed. I was kind of annoyed that they didn't have it in the second one as much.
Well, and the thing about the second one was that they put a lot of weight on the in the trailers on the adaptation of the hip hop song War Ready, and it's nowhere in the fucking soundtrack. Mm-hmm. And that was a huge disappointment as well, because I could have seen Jaeger cadets in Pacific Rim 2, like, doing some sort of, you know, war ready chant while doing PT or something.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen, and that was a lost opportunity, and it was a lost opportunity that really was a bummer for as far as good music and as far as setting up the whole thing. So all I know is that I want that War Ready track, and it doesn't exist. So I'm bummed. Anyway, so yeah, that was our take on Pacific Rim, and with that, we have our next project. We're gonna squeeze in a fifth one, kind of under the wire. We're going to be doing a little Christmas movie. And it's a Christmas movie that Mrs. Arbiter chose. She really wanted to do it. Mrs. Arbiter, what's our Christmas movie that we're going to review?
Gremlins.
Try that again, only not so cute.
Gremlins.
Gizmo. Caca.
Gizmo.
So yeah, look forward to that. It's going to be relatively rapid fire compared to the once every couple of months thing for us. And like with our November Battletech podcast, the December Battletech podcast is going to run concurrently to that. So that is pretty much it. If you liked what you heard and want to hear more, or you have suggestions for movies for us to review, be sure to drop us an email, arbitration.studios@gmail.com. You can follow me at JPArbiter. You can follow Mrs. Arbiter at Arbitrarily Yours. One Y in there for both arbitrarily and yours. So, and be sure to also check out our YouTube channel where we play video games and talk as tired old parents who just like video games. As of right now, we are starting an adventure with Spyro the Dragon, another thing that Mrs. Arbiter likes, so look forward to that. So, I got nothing else. You got anything else?
Nope.
All right, we will see you in the month of December for Gremlins. So, Happy Christmas!
Happy Christmas!